And that leads us into talking about the third component that's part of the admin suite, workflow solution set. Basically, this is another popular component we have as part of the history of Fishbowl and solving business problems with some of our technology and capabilities on top of WebCenter. And this is basically our answer to fill the gaps that the out-of-the-box workflow has within WebCenter. Workflow solution set is basically a suite of components and subcomponents, sample tokens, and scripts that can help organizations take advantage of the Oracle workflow functionality quickly and easily while ensuring a simple experience for your end users. It also includes the following components that you will see if you're going to the component manager, or you'll even see when you're in the Fishbowl administration, that allows for approving with comments, dealing with custom workflow notifications, customizing the workflow review pane, page workflow items, workflow history, release date, search, and the timeout helper, which are all features that were added to the product over the course of time that fit gaps and fix gaps within the WebCenter stack. The tool also provides an intuitive user interface that simplifies the basic content server workflow interface so users and administrators can better see and access the information that's critical to ensuring a smooth flow of information processes. So there are many organizations that don't use workflow, but those that do, many are using them in quite complex fashions, and this product helps enhance that experience. So we have these value-added features set on top of there that provides that ability to realize more power within how the content server workflow works out of the box. Our goal is to simplify as much as possible to the broad base of users and enable workflow within your organization so you stop with the struggling actions. We can help you through those challenges with Workflow Suite Set and putting digital processes around your day-to-day activities. Many people avoid the whole workflow scenario because of the challenges with out of the box or the impacts of the day-to-day activities. But if you do it right and you expose the right processes and you expose the right configuration and tools, you can make this an easy process. It is built for business users and enabling your business processes. It's also performant, as is the case with the page workflow items. This is also certified under 12C and 11G. And just for clarity's sake, for those of you who have might heard about BPM Suite, Business Process Management Suite, and BPL, Business Process Execution Language Workflows, this is not those items. This is core out-of-the-box WebCenter content workflow with our components on top of that. So let's step into some of the features, some of the pieces that are involved in that. And the first one is Approve with Comments. This was a nice handy feature that was added years ago when we found out that the approving and injecting with comments is a key element to the whole workflow process. So after selecting Approve in the workflow review for a content item, you're basically presented with an approval page where you can then add any comments before finalizing approval. There is a limited amount of space, but there's a reasonable amount of space for you to put a nice message, a paragraph or two on the approval process and reason for approving. The comments can be viewed for a released content item at any time within the workflow history page, which I'll show in the demo. The custom workflow notification. This component provides a template which can be used to customize workflow notifications based on specified workflow step, content type, or other condition as a result of your workflow process. When an item enters a workflow step, the customized email notification will be sent to all users that are reviewers of that step. The email message can be customized with any combination of IDOC script or HTML to provide links, security links, imagery, and additional text, and maybe contextual text around the email that might go out. Next is the customized workflow review frames, and these are one of the more handy features of the whole workflow review process and allows for an easy customization of that workflow review frame that you see when you're going through the approval process with the out-of-the-box workflow review step. It enables the administrators to hide any of the links in the workflow review frame based on the document's extension, the workflow it is in, or the workflow step. It also allows the user to customize the instructions displayed in the frame to help you contextually aware based on the step you're in, provide the right responses for the casual user that's in the step of the workflow. Many users in workflow are just simply approving based on what they know in a quick review and are moving on from that step, so they're not bogging down the process. Some of the features, you can customize the message text in the review flow page. You can hide those checkout, reject and approve and get native file links, or expose them based on the various steps. Page workflow items. This component basically improves the performance of the web workflow content items and my workflow assignment pages by separating the list of documents in the workflow into pages. It also allows users to filter and sort the items shown in the tables. It basically has results are split into multiple pages. It's configurable 20, 50, or 100. You display columns are configurable throughout the user interface in multiple places, actually. You have the ability to sort by column headings. Columns on my workflow assignment page is customized by the user, and the columns on the my workflow content items page are configurable per workflow. And it allows checked out content items displayed in the workflow on the checked out content page. There's multiple places where you see the results that are coming back on the items that might have to be in workflow, and I'll demonstrate those shortly. Workflow history is another popular element. So after an item gets through workflow, you get a history of that through the course of time as long as that content item is in the content server. This is a huge feature that our customers like and allows for providing an interface to view the actions that they have occurred on the workflow even after the item has left the workflow and is released to the general user community for viewing. It also stores and retrieves rejection comments made while the item was in workflow. So as you work up and down the chain based on your approval rejections, you can get comments at each step, regardless of whether it's approval or a rejection. And this updates the content server behavior, which is out of the box, is to discard the rejection comments when an item leaves workflow. Some of the highlights of these features include displaying workflow history on the content info page, stores rejection comments, provides an option to store mail notifications in the workflow history table, display the steps rejected from, not their step rejected to, links to workflow history from the workflow review page, provide an admin interface to configure the columns, and provide a service to select workflow history for a specific revision. So it's a very popular element of working through the whole workflow process, is as you work through and finalize that, you want to see what revision that content item has been through and what the workflow history was as a result of that. Next is the workflow release date. That next component is basically allows us to update the release date of the content item to the date and time when the document was released from workflow instead of the date and time when the document was initially checked in. A new metadata field called original in date is created, and the initial check-in date and time are stored there. Basically, the features of this component are it updates the inline date for items released from workflow prior to indexing if the existing inline date occurred in the past, and stores the original inline date in a new metadata field called original in date. The metadata field original in date is automatically updated and populated for content. It is not enabled on the user interface by default. If you want this field to be viewable to users, you can enable it through the configuration manager in the admin applets. Just load that up and then apply that to the right profile rules you wish to enable that value on. Workflow search. One of the common problems we saw early on with workflow was I can't tell what's in workflow. I don't know where this content item is, and I like to search items in a content workflow to see where things are at so I can find them. It's a handy component that's been developed over the years and allows users to search for a document in a workflow by content ID or title without needing to know which workflow or which step the document is in. So if you have an organization of dozens and dozens of workflows which contains multiple steps, it will be difficult to find an asset. So it allows for searching for documents in the workflow based on configured metadata values, providing user interface columns, separates results into pages, displays the number of days a document has been in a particular step, displays a list of remaining reviewers, adds links to common workflow actions, and provides a link to printer-friendly results table. And then you can export that to Excel if you'd like. And lastly, the workflow timeout helper component allows a user to set a timeout limit for a given workflow step. which will resend the workflow review notification email to all reviewers of the step. We all know that people are busy and it takes several notifications to finally prompt action in many cases. I'm as guilty as anyone, and this will get people's attention to facilitate taking action in a more timely manner. So let's take a look at what we'll demonstrate here quickly. We'll show you an ad hoc workflow and the approve or reject comments, the workflow review page and the configuration options, and the workflow history. So I'll take you to a piece of content that I've been working with, and this is a PowerPoint presentation which shows the workflow history. And I will check this out. And we'll leave it in a moment. Okay. So there's the example. And then I'm going to check this right back in, assuming I took a little while to make my changes. It's a simple profile with some basic data on it. And it's basically just a document I'm checking, in this case a PowerPoint. But the workflow is basically a three-step ad hoc workflow. This workflow has been configured so that it will work with one or more of the values being entered, and some can be skipped. So in this example, I have one step where two people can approve it on the first step, and the third step is one person who approves it. They're actually different individuals. So I'll pick the document off the system, check it back in, and then our system is using a product called Duplicate File Checker, which is validating that I'm not duplicating too much of what I'm checking into my environment, and then it's off and running. So I can then flip over to my active workflows, and this active workflow is the one called Ad Hoc, and it shows me that my item is in GenWW and going through the conversion process, and it is in the first workflow step. In this case, I am not the approver of that item. But if I flip over to my other user, I can see that under my workflow assignments, I will see values from my workflow queue. And here's where we'll start seeing features of workflow solution step popping up in these sortable columns, as well as filtering to look for items in this column. In case I have a long list of items in my workflow, I can configure different values to add to my display. Simply dragging and dropping and saving, and it will add a new column to my workflow display. And I can deal with my pagination here, and I can clear my filters if I had any of those turned on. So it's a very simple, intuitive interface for the casual user to work with. In this first step of workflow, if I go to the workflow review frame, I will see the document that was converted over to my right, like I normally do out of the box. Over on the left is my workflow review pane, and there's the instructions. So workflow solution set allows me to define the set of instructions for this step in the workflow. I can also enable or disable these various links on this left side. So as the first step of the workflow approval, as this individual, I can approve, reject, check it out, and eventually check it back in and make changes. I can also see the WebView and native and some other links. In this case, I'm going to simply approve it. And I have 480 characters remaining in space to make this approval commentary. And then it will move automatically to the next step of the defined workflow configuration I have that's out of the box. In this case, it goes to the third step. I cannot do anything on this as this user, but if I flip back to my other user, it will show up in my workflow queue, and it is the third step, and I have a different set of columns displayed, if you'll notice, than that other user did in my other browser. I can also look at my workflow info, which is out of the box here. We do not disturb any of that. And I can also approve or reject, in this case, and provide comments. I'm going to approve this through. and it is out of the workflow queue and has now been released. And I can go to the content info page, and workflow solution set allows me to show the workflow history here for the most recent, or for the, the current revision I am looking at. I can click over to view the history, or I can flip over to the history from here. And if I switch to the previous revision, I will see revision 5. And I can flip over to the full list of all revisions that went through the process and all the steps in the workflow at the time, all the individuals who were on the approval steps, and any messages in that approval step. And out-of-the-box content server security does get enforced as part of the workflow process. And I can click back to my content info page as a result of that. There's a lot more power under the covers from a workflow solution set perspective, but I wanted to give you a quick little demonstration on how that tool works.